দর্শক সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি চ্যানেল 24-এর নিয়মিত আয়োজন মুখোমুখিতে। আপনাদের সাথে আছি আমি সারওয়ার সুমন। আজ মুখোমুখি অনুষ্ঠানে আমরা এমন একজন ব্যক্তির সাথে কথা বলতে চাই যিনি একাধারে সমাজ সংস্কারক এবং বিশেষত শিশু অধিকার নিয়ে কাজ করেন এবং কাজ করার স্বীকৃতিস্বরূপ 2014 সালে বিশ্বখ্যাত নোবেল পুরস্কারও উনি পেয়েছেন। শুধু সমাজ সংস্কারক কিংবা শিশু অধিকার নিয়ে কাজ করা নয়, উনি একই সাথে লেখক, কবি এবং চমৎকার রান্নাও করেন বলে আমরা জেনেছি। আসুন কথা বলি 2014 সালের নোবেল পুরস্কার জয়ী কৈলাস সত্যার্থীর সাথে। মিস্টার কৈলাস সত্যার্থী, ইটস অ্যান honor and privilege of our to have you in our Mukhomukhi program.
Thank you. It's also my pleasure.
So, Mr. Kailash, many of us know that you left a lucrative electric engineering job and career and formed Bachpan Bachao Andolon. And over the 4 decades, it has rescued more than 1 lakh children from child labor. But many people believe that slavery has been abolished long ago, but it is not. Particularly if you look at your works. What is your take on this?
Slavery, and particularly child slavery, is the curse on the entire humanity. It's a denial of human dignity and human right and liberty. You are right that many people think that slavery might have been abolished 100 years ago or 50 years ago or so globally. But unfortunately this is not true. The reality is that millions of children are still held in slavery. They have no childhood, no freedom, no future across the globe. And that's a global problem, and that has to be fought with a sense of priority. Sometimes I think that how civilization and slavery can go on together, how the technological advancement and slavery of children can continue together, how important are constitutions and powerful are constitutions and laws in the world. International treaties and bindings are there, but despite all that, children are still forced to live in worse conditions than the animals, and that is a stigma on our face.
Okay, so slavery is not abolished at all.
No,
It is
it still
prevailing.
continue, it's still prevailing.
If you look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goal, as per SDG, all member states, UN member states are committed to end child labor within 2025, and 2025 is so near, it is 2023. Is not it too short to end this and to achieve this goal?
As you know that I am one of those SDG advocates appointed by the Secretary General.
Yeah, you all know.
But I will confess with some sense of shame that world has never been so poor as it was centuries ago. But world is not so rich or
As it is
wealthy
now.
as it is now.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that in the first 4 years of SDGs, between 2016 and 2020, world has become $10 trillion richer, $10 trillion. But during that time, every day, every single day, 10,000 children were pushed into child labor and slavery, trafficking, forced marriages, and committing petty crimes controlled by the mafia groups. 10,000 children every day, mainly in African region. There is no excuse for that. There is no justification for that. That when the world is growing richer, the children are left out, children are left behind, children are falling apart, and they were pushed into child labor and slavery. Today we have 160 million child laborers. That means 160 million empty seats in the classrooms globally. That also means 160 million jobs of adults taken over or given to children, because children are the cheapest source of labor. It also means that 160 million missed environmental actions to address the issue of climate change. Because children who are left out, children who are enslaved, children who are working in mines and factories and farms and household work as domestic slaves.
Agriculture sector
and
also.
agriculture sector, fields and farms. This means they are not the one who are going to fight and raise their voice against the global warming and the climate crisis. So we are paying a big price of continuing child labor and child slavery globally. We live in the world of knowledge economy, rather digital economy. The most sophisticated knowledge can rescue the world from any crisis. But how this knowledge and technology is being controlled by fewer people, by fewer countries. And the children in developing countries are left out, and that is unacceptable.
But in this realm, we must not forget the pandemic issue, right? Pandemic poses a greater risk, particularly on child slavery and child labor. What is your take on this?
Actually, world is passing through compounded crisis, the age of compounded crisis, but also the age of competitive issues. Yesterday, say HIV/AIDS was an issue, or health was an issue, then education was an issue, then the wars in the past were an issue, the Gulf, the Cold War, all kind of things. And then for last few years, pandemic, COVID-19 was an issue to be addressed with a sense of urgency. Then we started seeing the consequences of this, not only the health consequences, but the economic, financial consequences of it. And then came Russian invasion on Ukraine. So many things are happening. But I tell you, that world should have learned at least one thing in this pandemic, because the enemy was common enemy for everyone, that is coronavirus. What the learning could have been, that we are not only interconnected, but the world is interdependent. We cannot solve each other's, without we don't solve each other's problem, we cannot solve our problem. That should have been the learning, but unfortunately not. People like us who raise this voice that millions, maybe dozens of millions of children will be left out from schools, or they may not come back to school, and so many problems.
Yeah.
And maybe pushed into child marriage and child labor and so on. And that is happening today. So the rich countries, the G7 countries, have allocated initially $8 trillion and later on $12 trillion funds, what they call the global agenda of action for COVID-19. But that global response was missing. Out of these $12 trillion, only 0.13%, not even half percent, 0.13% has been given to the marginalized children and people in developing countries. So that shows the apathy, that shows the economic injustice.
As we are talking about Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is also a UN member state, and Bangladesh is also committed to end the child labor. But 2025 isn't a very short time. Is it possible for Bangladesh to end child labor completely? What is your suggestion to Bangladesh and Bangladesh civil society and other child activists?
Well, let me underline here that Bangladesh has made tremendous progress in many spheres of life, definitely, and reduction of child labor. Ensuring education was the key. And in mid 2000, 2003, 4, 5, when I was the chair of the Global Campaign for Education, which was very active in Bangladesh, we used to say with pride that Bangladesh was the first South Asian country that has attained gender parity in education, in primary education, and then again Bangladesh was the first country to attain or to achieve the gender equality in secondary education also. So in some places, I visited some places in Bangladesh those days, and I found that the number of girls was more than the number of boys in primary classes, and that was great. That was great thing. But I think it's a collective responsibility, not only of the government, but also of all parties, faith institutions, Hindus, Muslims, everyone, Christians, corporate sector. The Bangladeshis who are wealthy and making money across the world, across the world, is the responsibility of civil society also. Everyone should come together to put an end to this menace. And this formula is not just for Bangladesh, it should happen everywhere in the world, in each country and globally, because how can we call ourselves civilized if we leave our children behind? If parents are taking a train or a flight or a bus and they are in rush, they wanted to run faster and their young kids are left out, how can they be responsible parents? So we have to think as responsible parents, responsible sisters and brothers of those young children. If one single child anywhere in the world is enslaved, I would say the world is not free. If one single child is raped, murdered, or facing any kind of cruelty, we cannot call ourselves, the world cannot call itself cultured, human. My parameter, my measurement is very simple, that how do the results of our policies and programs reach out to the last child who is living somewhere in a village, in Bangladesh or in India or in South Sudan or in Latin America. That should be our measurement, and that is possible when we should come together. Sometimes I say that we have learned so many things in the world. We walk on the same earth. We did not learn how to walk together. We have to learn how to walk together. Rich countries, poor countries, rich people, poor people, people from all religions and faiths, they should learn how to walk together. They should learn how to talk together, how to listen to each other.
So it is not individual's role or duty, it's a collective
It's a collective role.
Mr. Kailash, do you see excluded the child labor issue from the larger fight to ensure the basic rights, food, shelter, education? Is it excluded or is it a included fight?
Included fight, because child labor cannot be seen and solved in isolation. We have to ensure good quality, equitable public education, free public education for all children in the world. That is preventive measure as well as that is the rehabilitative measures. Children must be in schools, that means no child labor. But only opening a school and hiring teachers won't work until and unless these children are withdrawn from factories and mines and agriculture sector and fields. So these two things have to go on hand in hand. But equally important is to address the problem of malnutrition and stunting. Equally is important that the children should be given health care, because if they fall sick in their early childhood and childhood, then that will that problem will carry for whole of their lives. So it is important that children should be safe, free, healthy and educated. So safety, health, freedom and education have to be assured in one package for every child. And I tell again and again that it's a collective responsibility of the entire world, because children do not belong to one country. I know that many of the children from South Asia who were well educated in our countries, many of the children from other parts of the world who were well educated, they are helping in advancement of technology in America, in Europe, in different parts of the world. They are helping and producing wealth for those countries. So for the progress of those countries, many of the people, young people, sometimes as workers, sometimes as engineers, software engineers in particular, doctors, they have helped in producing wealth for the rest of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
So nobody can say that we can do the things on our own and we can solve our own problems. So it's a collective responsibility. And that's why I keep on calling for one thing, that we have globalized markets and economies, we have globalized knowledge, technology, we have globalized our productions, our thoughts and so many other things. This is the time after pandemic we should learn globalizing compassion. We must globalize compassion. And this part of the world, which has huge heritage, that has huge wealth of wisdom for centuries, for millenniums, one should lead, we should lead to globalize compassion. We should try to build compassionate leadership in all walks of life. When I say compassion, it does not mean sympathy or empathy. Compassion is the feeling of suffering for others as one's own suffering. And then strong drive to elevate, to end that suffering. That is the drive which is inbuilt with the compassion. So compassion is not a teaching or preaching or a value or a virtue. Compassion is something which is inherent in each one of us. As I said, in case of pandemic, we have seen it. So we could bring miracle that time. Why we can't continue that miracle of compassion all times?
If you think that we are putting man on moon, we are trying to putting man on Mars, but here on Earth, according to ILO, 1 out of 10 children is involved in child labor. Yes. And in this context, what are the possible risks and dangers a country could face if child labor is prevailing there?
If child labor prevails, that means education is denied. If education is denied, the economic growth of that nation is denied. Gender equality and gender justice is denied. That also means mutual understanding, learning and harmony is denied. That also means the justice is denied. So children must not be forced to work as child laborers or child slaves, because education is the key to all kind of progress we wanted to make in any country. So every child has to be educated, has to be in school. I talked to a number of Nobel laureates in the world and world leaders with an idea, and I am happy to say that they were very supportive of this idea, that in Bangladesh, also in India and many more countries, even the countries like Nigeria or South Africa, Kenya, many countries we have seen that the social protection programs like stipend for poor people, poor children, which are existing here in Bangladesh, and many other programs, school feeding programs. The school feeding program in Bangladesh was one of the crux of the success of gender parity.
And it is kind of role model all over in the world.
So that social protection program have helped not only the poor people but their children, retention of children in schools and ending child labor or reducing child labor. Europe has done it successfully 70-80 years ago. But Europe, in spite of their big promises they make for the developing countries, they are not fulfilling their promises. I tell you that 53 billion additional dollars can ensure social protection for all children and all pregnant women in all low-income countries or developing countries. All marginalized children of the world and women could be supported with $53 billion additional expenditure. And what is this $53 billion? This is less than 10 days of global military expenditure.
Only 10 days.
Less than 10 days, I tell
Less
you,
than
my
10
brother.
days.
How you can justify? You want wars? Do you want guns? You want nuclear weapons? You want killings of each other? What you want? And calling yourself civilized.
Right. So
and you are
unfortunate.
not giving education and healthcare, food to our children in the world. $53 billion. So I'm thankful to the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Appa. I had good conversation with her last time when she was visiting in India, and she wholeheartedly supported that idea of a global social protection mechanism. We have been able to get that support from many countries, and that is emerging slowly for the formation of a global social protection mechanism where the resources could be mobilized at one place by international institutions, financial institutions, and the rich countries. And of course, the developing countries have to demonstrate their strong willingness by way of good policies, good programs, good schemes, and good budgetary allocations. And then they must be supported, because all the developing countries cannot really achieve those goals.
Budgetary allocation is the key fact.
Both. One is budgetary allocation, and secondary one is overseas development assistance.
Overseas development. Why overseas
Both.
development?
We need support from there, because they are making money from the developing countries. Our people produce wealth. Our people in developing nations dig out minerals, and these minerals are sold across the
Making
world.
them rich.
Yeah, our people are knitting yarn and clothes and making garments and all kind of things, carpets and woolen materials, and used everywhere in the world. So big companies are profiting out of it. I'm not against that profit. I'm not against globalization of economies and markets. I'm not against, but there should be fair share for children in the world, fair share for Africa particularly in the world, because Africa is facing much serious problem than rest of the world in last say few years.
And you have been very actively working in Africa also?
Of course, I have been working in Africa for many years, maybe more than 35 years.
Your organization, Bachpan Bachao Andolan, as I mentioned earlier, it has how this is possible, how you free an enormous number of children from child labor. In short, but we want to know that story.
I will give you one example which is close to my heart. When I am sitting in Bangladesh, there was a boy who has been trafficked or somehow ran away and crossed the borders from Bangladesh to India. His name was Muhammad. So Muhammad was put to work at a small restaurant, at a tea shop. Then he was sold by this person to someone else because the tea shop was closed. So he was trafficked from some place near Kolkata to Delhi, from Delhi to Dehradun, the north, and then brought back to Delhi. We came to know about him that he is by that time he was about 14, 15-year-old boy, and he changed his name also. So when we freed a group of children, including him, his name was something different, some Hindi name. So I was started talking to him, and he was trying to say again and again that he is a Bengali guy from West Bengal. But somehow I was not convinced, reading his face, because I have personally rescued tens of thousands of children and met them and helped them in their
expert on this.
Yeah, that feeling, it's not expertise. So I said, my son, now you are free. You have been sold many times. You have scars on your body. But tell me the truth. Whether it's your real name, you are not telling anything about your parents, anything about your village. So he said that I forgot everything because I was very young. But the Eid was close by. So I was talking to someone that let us celebrate Eid. We celebrate all festivals. So in our ashram, I saw the spark in the eyes of Muhammad. I said to him, his name was something like Samir or something. I said, Samir, tell, why are you so happy about Eid? Do you want to celebrate Eid? I saw the tears in his eyes. I said, if you tell the truth to me, I am like your father, you are my son. I will make sure that if your parents are alive, I will take them, I'll take you to them, or I will bring them to you so that you can celebrate your Eid with your parents. Then he started crying. Then he told his real name and story. I was holding his hands and I was consoling him like father. He started crying. Then he remembered the name of his village and the location. The idea that there was a big tree, banyan tree, there was a pond, and my father was very poor. Sometimes we had to keep hungry. Sometimes my father used to go and do some fishing and bring some fish to us and all these things. So I said, you are from Bangladesh. He said, I crossed the border, but I don't know much about Bangladesh, because that time he was 5-6 years old.
He crossed the border on his own, or
No,
by
with the group.
trafficker?
But traffickers brought him.
Okay.
So traffickers brought some children on the border area, somewhere near the border. So not children, but also some adults. So he lost the way then. And then he was in India and he could not cross the borders. So then the traffickers know how to do all these kind of things. So I was very moved, and I picked up the phone and I called some of my people that on the basis of that draw a map and try to find out through our friends in Bangladesh. And also we informed the High Commission, Bangladeshi High Commission in India. And the High Commissioner himself was very, very moved with this story. I said, I made a promise to that boy that I wanted to send him to his parents. So then, with the help of the government of Bangladesh and with the help of the NGOs here, some local groups, I was able to find the village. And then the police went to the village to confirm that whether he is that boy and they are the parents, real parents. I did not tell to the boy, but I was able to contact the parents. They spoke only Bangla. So that was confirmed that this lady was the mother. Then I called Muhammad. I said, Muhammad, do you want to talk to someone? He picked up the phone. And he was shivering like anything. I said that, talk to someone in Bangladesh. And I tell you that when he heard the voice of his mother and the mother heard the voice, both of them were screaming like anything. And I mean, that was such a divine, feeling for me. It happened many times in my life, but that was such a great thing that just before the Eid, we were able to send him, and on that Eid day, he was able to greet his mother. My people, my activists from the organization, my foundation, they accompanied. Bangladeshi police was there, the Indian Border Security Force police help. But thanks to the Bangladeshi government and particularly the Bangladeshi High Commissioner in India, to prepare all the documents for his repatriation without any other entity with him, but he was repatriated back home.
Wonderful.
So each time when I free such children and help them in reuniting with their parents, with their younger sisters and brothers and families, it's like feeling the grace of God, the blessing of God, and that has happened more than 100,000 times in my life.
That is the secret behind this enormous task. My final question to you, Mr. Kailash, that why it is not only Kailash Satyarthi's fight or any child right activists or any child rights organization, is not it all citizens' duty to end child labor, child slavery? What is your take on this?
I always think that children are our children. Children are not responsible for dividing humanity in any form. They have not created borders. So someone like me cannot really believe in borders. political borders or geographical borders between the countries and nations. I can't believe in any wall. And I always say that, my dear friends, break those walls and use those bricks in making the bridges between all countries, between all human beings. The walls of religions, the walls of ideologies, the walls of political differences. Let us, walls of, gender discrimination, let us break those walls. So in case of children, let us begin with our children. Let us learn from our children because they are all our children. That is my sense to everyone, that if a children is protected anywhere in the world is protected. If children is educated in the world will grow high. So we must do, and everybody can do. I tell you that everybody can do. Everybody is either a father or a mother or a brother or an uncle of a child. Everybody has experienced childhood in his or her life. So think of being a child, that once you were children, you have dreams, you have aspirations. So we have to work for every child. And finally, I will share a story. There was a heavy fire broken out in jungle once, and all animals and birds and everyone was leaving the jungle and rushing for a safer place, including King Lion. And Lion noticed a tiny hummingbird flying straight towards the flames. And he shouted, "What are you doing, committing suicide?" She said, "No, sir. I am born and grew up here, so I am going to extinguish this fire." "How can you kill that fire?" She said, "Sir, look at my beak. I am carrying a drop of water. मेरे चोंच में पानी का एक बूंद है, उसे देखो." So carrying a drop of water, this tiny bird flew towards the flame. And she said, "Sir, I am doing my bit." My dear friends who are listening, watching this show, do your bit for children. Love your children, respect your children. They are all human beings. Not your own biological children, but children in your neighborhood, children in your nation, anywhere, children in your world. This is all our world, which we have to give to our children, making it safer and beautiful, more genuine, more human, more just. So it is our collective responsibility.
Of course, our collective responsibility. Mr. Kailash, thank you so much for having with us, and we wish you all the success in your fight against child labor. And we also want that you come frequently here and visit Bangladesh and put some remarks and put some footsteps here also. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
দর্শক, মুখোমুখি আজ এখানেই শেষ করছি। ভবিষ্যতে নতুন অতিথির সাথে নতুন বিষয় নিয়ে আবারও কথা হবে। সবাই ভালো থাকুন, সুস্থ থাকুন।